Here today to talk about change your money, change your life, change your story about money, change your life. And so let me share my slides with you. Change your money story. And the reason we want to talk about stories today is just because stories are how we organize our core beliefs. And so if you can unravel the limiting story and start to rewrite a more empowering story, it's far more powerful than a lot of other techniques out there to help people change core beliefs. And this is from our new book, MindStory Inner Coach, that I wrote with my partner, Dave O'Connor. In particular, chapter 10, which is about the hero's journey, writing your story around any area of life where you feel blocked. And you'll also discover in the book a 5-step self-coaching model called the Avara model to overcome those limiting stories. So then there's this natural growth process in your life. So what we'll cover today is how this is different from typical money mindset material. And you might be big fans of mindset. I'm sure a lot of you are. But this is going to be a little bit different than maybe what you've seen out there. Some overlap, some different. How to stop worrying about money and judging yourself around past mistakes around money, because those two will keep you stuck with money in a really big way. And I know sometimes we're like, I can't stop worrying about money, but you can. There are ways. And so we'll talk about that. And therefore, creating a profound shift in perspective that can make you like a magnet for prosperity and abundance. So you don't feel like you're chasing it. It's sort of naturally coming to you in this nice sort of give and receive of value and reciprocity in the world by shifting who you are inside. And so it's about using the power of story to make it stick, right? So that it's not this thing you have to will yourself to do in terms of shifting the core beliefs. So where this came from was this phenomenon of creating a why story. And I just want to see who's on. Oh, hey, Odette and Marielle and Sherlock. So nice to see you. And Mark, we're multi-streaming actually on many platforms right now, so it's kind of fun. And there's Ria. Okay, cool. And Carol and Timothy. Cool. So yeah, be sure to type questions and insights and everything like that. So where this phenomenon came from was, I help people grow their business through speaking. And I also have been helping leaders speak to motivate their teams for years on those two topics. And so often, if you really want to motivate a group to take action, it helps to share your why story, right? And maybe you already have a why story, which is great. But if you don't, it's a really good thing to do. And you can have many why stories depending on what you're offering or what idea you want people to buy into. And so I often notice that when I worked with someone and they reframed all their challenges in their past in terms of how it made them a wiser, more resilient, stronger, better qualified person to be doing what they're doing now, it completely changed their self-image and therefore their results. It was very interesting. And so I wanted to show you how to do this. Whether you get the book or not, you can still do it on your own. You can see the book link in the description of this event. And type your questions and comments as we go along into the comments or any insights. That's very cool. Cool. Now, when I was a kid, I played this game called Life, and maybe you played it as well. I loved it because it really, I guess, showed the fact that it was a philosophy I was already starting to buy into, and maybe you buy into it too, that life is a game. And if you buy into that idea, then any struggle that you have in your life, any challenge, could be seen as something that makes the game more interesting, something to help you skill build. So life is like a virtual reality skill building game. So if you come from that philosophy, I think it makes life a lot more easy or a lot more, not so much easy, but much more fun, I think, and interesting. It's more like an adventure than a series of things that I have to try to avoid, right? So because of that, I'm going to come from that philosophy in what I'm talking about today. The cool thing is the mind organizes both limiting and empowering beliefs, I should say, core beliefs in story form. So you have all these, different neural pathways going on and cells firing and sending information in different directions. And a lot of it's organized like a story is organized, right? Like there's theme and there's plot and there's, oh, by the way, let me know if you can hear me, everybody. If you can't hear me, let me know. Looks like people can hear me, that's good. But let me just double check over here just to make sure. Okay, good. Yes, we have our sound. Okay, cool. So, if you think of a story, there's plot and there's theme and there's characters and there's scripts. And so it's all organized in there. So if you just take out like a script or you change like a self-image, which I would call like a character in a story, but you don't change the other parts, then it can glom back into place quite easily. So that's why I think stories are so powerful. And this is sort of an interesting depiction of what a limiting versus an empowering mind story might look if you were to be able to depict it symbolically. It's sort of like, ice crystals that have been given positive energy versus negative energy, that a limiting mind story kind of corrupts what I consider to be your actual story that you're meant to live by, which is very empowering. And along the way, it gets corrupted and chipped and made asymmetrical, but you can rebuild it. And so that no matter what happens in your life, whether it's around money or success or relationships or health, that you could get this mind story in the right place to make it a much more empowering journey for yourself. So what a lot of people, I found that when I was working with them on their why story, they said, my story, the story of my past proves I'm a failure. Like they weren't saying that consciously, but in talking to them about it, it became clear that that's what they felt. Whereas the truth is the story of my past is neutral and I create my own meaning around it. Like if you can shift to that, the story of my past and all my mistakes and all my missteps and all the things that I might be regretting at this point are neutral, and I can create my own meaning, that shift over is massive in terms of life fulfillment, success, abundance, prosperity. And I mean abundance and prosperity in a variety of ways, not just financially, but a lot of us are really driven to learn and change because of the money thing, because the money really affects people's survival brain. And so they're very interested in solving that. But in solving that, they end up solving a lot of other juicy life issues. So I always like to go into that one. Because many of you might be telling yourself a story that's a cautionary tale. Okay, remember when you did that? Don't do that again. Remember when you did that? Don't do that again, right? And there's nothing wrong with learning from your past, but if it's always from that survival brain trauma perspective, like if it's held in the trauma center of the brain and you haven't brought it into the wisdom centers of the brain, the neocortex, then you can't really extract the wisdom, and you do tend to repeat those mistakes. And so that's why doing an exercise like this, telling yourself a story, especially in an area of your life that you're blocked in, that's in the form of what's called a hero's journey. And if you don't know what that is, I will describe that to you in a moment. Now, stories deeply affect the subconscious mind. And you may or may not be aware of that, but like you go to a movie, and if it's certain ones that actually affect us very deeply, it can change not only the individual, but you can see like a whole culture change due to like a blockbuster movie, like The Matrix or Star Wars or one of those. Or I remember when Top Gun came out, it affected enrollment in the Air Force like exponentially, right? And so the stories other people tell you, the stories you tell yourself are the most powerful, of course, and will affect you for good or bad, depending on the nature of the story. Now, why do some stories affect us more than others? Because there are movies, say, or books you've read or stories you hear that you're like, whatever, that doesn't affect you. It doesn't go deep. It doesn't go to the subconscious. But some of them do. And so why do you suppose that is? So just be thinking about that for yourself right now. And some of you have heard me talk about this, there's the top 6 most rewatched movies of all time. And this is an interesting website. Of course, one of them is Star Wars. And this is movies that many people have watched over and over and over again because there's something that they're hungry for in the story. So think about that for yourself. What stories have you watched many times over? It's a movie, or I know me, I've read certain novels several times over because there's layers upon layers. And if I read it at a different time in my life or watch it at a different time in my life, I get it. I get something deeper, right? Depending on where you are in your hero's journey, right? So the top 6 were Star Wars, The Wizard of Oz, The Matrix, Groundhog's Day, Gone with the Wind, and Titanic. Now, there's many others, but those were the top 6. And Groundhog's Day is funny because it's about someone reliving the same day over and over again. And some people want to rewatch that many times over again. So what makes all people want to rewatch a movie like that is because there's a substructure to it, similar to what Joseph Campbell, the great mythologist, once called the hero's journey, where, there's this story that he noticed all through history and all through different cultures that's very similar, right? That we as humans are telling ourselves the same story. And that if it's told in that way, it's very psychologically satisfying. And it's also helps people grow, like, and see the world in new ways and become a wiser, richer, more resilient, more compassionate person in the world. And so what I like to do is look and see, what's the story? That's a hero's journey story. And many people who do have money problems have 3 types of archetypal characters they cast themselves as. And they don't maybe realize that it's subconscious, but one of them's the beggar, one of them's the orphan, and one of them's, I call it the corrupted one, or like the Dr. Faust character. For some of you who are familiar with that story of he sold his soul to the devil in order to get riches. And so if there's more archetypes that cause problems than that, but those are the top 3. And so in all my years of coaching people, money issues come up a lot, of course, especially if you're out there in the world trying to, build a business or, grow your career. Money issues will, of course, come up because we're humans and we're on this journey. And that's one of the game handicaps, right? To make us stronger and wiser. So, often you'll see someone, say, who had humble beginnings. So think about that in your own life, like, and your parents were always starving for money. It doesn't mean you were actual beggars on the street, but there's this sort of energy of I have to beg people for money. Like people who work in nonprofits, some of them have that because they're always having to write grant proposals and stuff. So it's more of an energy rather than an actual thing that you do of begging. The orphan was one that I had. We were sort of middle class and my parents had money, but both of them had to work in order to cover the bills. And my dad had a business, so he was working 7 days a week, but his income would go up and down wildly. And then my mother took on a job that was long hours, just to cover the times when his income was down. So they were never around. And so I kind of felt like an orphan. And I kind of thought, well, you can have money, but there's a cost, right? Both of them didn't have life balance. And my sister and I were left to our own devices, and that just didn't seem right to me. And so that didn't really look like a good outcome. And the interesting thing was, my father came from a family, and think about this with your own family background because they affect your money beliefs. So my father came from a band of carnival gypsies. He grew up and they were very poor. And so he always just wanted to escape that. And he was a self-made man, and he would just like make his own way in the world. And he was always really running after trying to be more prosperous. Whereas my mother had this other one, which is she came from a family that had money, like they were kind of upper middle class, and she felt that they got corrupted by the money when they started to do well, that they started to become sort of classist and snobby. And, she could only marry someone who was from Oxford or Eton. She grew up in England. And she couldn't have any freedom. Like somehow it meant her not having freedom, and that she would have to sell her soul, sell her, what she really wanted to do with her life in order to appeal to, to have a moneyed life. And so when they met, right, like, of course, her parents were not happy that she married my dad. And so they cut her out of the will, right? And so she just came to Canada and just decided, I'm not going to have anything to do with that. And it's sort of interestingly, my dad was interested in my mom because she came from money, and my mom was interested in my dad because he didn't come from money, right? And so they sort of were like ships passing in the night, and they didn't stay together because they had clashing archetypes. But so I noticed I had both going on, right? So you can sort of see where you might have clashing beliefs that get in your way, right? And so if you have, say, one of those, like say you had the beggar as your archetype, there's a certain script that goes with the beggar, like there's not enough. There's not enough for me, there's not enough for others. And so chances are those people tend to stay in the ordinary world. They might get this call to change, but they tend to refuse the call and go back to the ordinary world because there's just not enough. So they're in scarcity consciousness. So they kind of make a little bit of movement and then they go back. Now, the orphan is the type that will maybe not refuse a call, like eventually like meet a mentor. And then they'll cross the threshold, cross the line here, number 5. But then as soon as they get trials, allies, and enemies, they'll tend to get stuck there because they have this belief that they're an orphan and they don't have the support in life they don't trust the mentors and the allies, and therefore the trials and the enemies overtake them. And we all need help in life. And I've had that with coaching clients who have a really hard time being supported. They have this sort of orphan victim mentality. And I recognize it because I used to have it. And they'll get help and then they'll push it away and say, and kind of see the world as not able to help them, right? So you just want to see, is there an archetype, for example, affecting you? And so those kind of people get stuck, right, on the hero's journey at that number 6, trials, allies, and enemies. Now, the third type that gets money, but then starts to make mistakes with it. They, maybe lose the money, they invest it poorly, they give all their money away to somebody, they buy stupid things with it, and then, or they feel like they become very materialistic and kind of lose sight of who they really are and their humanity, right? And so then they can get stuck in kind of selling themselves out constantly just to keep the money, right? And they're worrying all the time. And then they can get stuck in this number 7 phase where you're really supposed to face the darkness in order to come out of it. So it's like the belly of the whale, right? Where you have to face your shadow and learn from it if you're going to keep going forward. So if you can get out of it, then you get to go on the journey where you get the new perspective, the number 9. And then number 10, you can return to the ordinary world with the elixir, with the wisdom and, You have prosperity and you're on purpose, right? You're not selling yourself out for the money. You're on purpose. You have the money that you need. You see the world as abundant. You are good with yourself. You've healed. You've forgiven yourself for the past. And therefore, you have so much more to help others with, especially if you're in any type of mentorship role, coaching or leading others. This can be very helpful for you to then help them who are stuck on their journey, help them rewrite their story. And so common beliefs that block abundance, and we've talked about a few, the orphans is, or I should say the beggar is there's not enough. The orphans is I don't deserve it. The Dr. Faustus characters, I'll get corrupted or I'll lose it, right? So you have it, but you're worried all the time. And so if you want to know what your money beliefs are, a great thing to do is to do the Avara model that's in the book. And you'll see the book link if you want to kind of see if that's something that you would like to get. And the Avara model helps you go into the dark recesses of your subconscious mind and pull them up to the surface where you can see them. And then you can see which ones you want to keep, which ones you don't, and go through the cell chemical process of, combining the masculine, feminine, the light and the dark, the negative and the positive to create true abundance that lasts, true prosperity that lasts, instead of the roller coaster of up and down, where you have it and you're worried you'll lose it, and then you lose it, and then you're grasping for more, and it's a way a lot of people are in the world. So it can help you break out of that. And when people do that, they discover all kinds of fears, like fear of failure. But some people have fear of success, right? Like, if I become successful with money, maybe I'll be a target for negativity. Maybe all my relatives will start coming after me for money, and I won't want to say no. Or maybe people will try to, swindle me, or, people have all kinds of stuff around fear of success. And you don't even know what's going on, right? It's going on in the background. So if you can pull them up to the surface and transform them. I'm going to show you in a moment about what it takes to transform them so that they actually stick. And a big one, of course, is fear of poverty. And it's just one of those ones that really affects the survival brain and really makes people go off their true path and what they're supposed to do in this world in a really big way. And the Buddhists always say, right, if you can get over fear of poverty, fear of aging and illness, and fear of death, those three, you're free, right? Because those are the big three that keep us stuck, keep us in a mind prison in a really big way. So if you can face that fear and process it and burn through it, it actually these fears become your friends, believe it or not. So, hey, I'm just seeing who's here, Annette and Sheila and Marielle, and it's over on this other platform, Timothea and Malik. Cool, welcome. Yeah, so make sure you type in your questions or comments or insights. That's very helpful for others as well. So what most people do, like their fears come up around money, whether it's fear of failure, fear of success, fear of losing it, fear that they're not good enough, fear that they won't have enough, is they do one of three things. They resist, react, or avoid. So resisting is you sort of sense those coming up, like in the wee hours of the morning, you wake up and you feel those thoughts start to creep into your mind. Some people like push them away. No, I have to be positive. I have to be positive. And you're like pushing them down. It's kind of like trying to push a beach ball underwater, right? You're trying to hold it down, but eventually you can't keep holding it down and it comes up. And that's when you can become reactive. I don't know if you've ever felt like that. Just suddenly you have this outburst at yourself or others, or just because you can't find the cookies, right? Or whatever. And it's the resistance coming up to be dealt with. The other thing people do is avoid, and the popular way that people avoid is through some form of addiction, right? Overeating, overdrinking, overworking, Netflix binging, whatever is your thing. Everyone seems to have something. And it's a way to distract so you don't have to feel those emotions. But the problem is then you get stuck. They kind of own you instead of you owning them. So if you can do what's called process your emotions, and I'm sure some of you do lots of processing, the more ways you have, the better. So I like to use the metaphor of like a wood burning stove, where your negative emotions are like these old dead trees, right? The fallen trees that you've cut up and you put in the fire. And then the fire is your attention, right? Your loving, kind, compassionate attention on the feeling, just feeling wherever it is in the body, feeling it, experiencing it, like going into the feeling, because it's not that big a deal once you really go in there, and that starts to burn it. And that starts to create warmth and energy and creativity, and your life starts to get movement, right? And you get out of these stuck places. And so common beliefs that attract abundance can now flourish, right? Because you take the ash of that burning and you put it in your garden, which creates fertile soil that creates the fertile soil for these new beliefs to thrive. So the opposite one, if you wanted to break free of the beggar, there's enough for everyone. And so the opposite of the beggar archetype is like the giver, right? The giver of the world, the one who feels generous and magnanimous, right? Instead of grasping and trying to get from everybody. And then the orphan turnaround is I deserve it. And the opposite of the orphan archetype is like, I'm connected to the world. I have support. I allow support. I allow helpfulness. And that you reach out and you accept it, right? And then the third, I'll keep my integrity of purpose in the face of success. And kind of along with that is I'll manage it well. And so, that's maybe the guide and the leader who knows, you're going to be a wise, guide for others. So you want to be a living bridge for others. You want to be an example of what's possible. And so now those have fertile ground to grow. And if you're unsure of what are your core limiting money beliefs, just look at your results. And that can feel uncomfortable at first, but look at your results and you will see what's going on in your life. Now, the trick when you do that, when you look and see, you look at your results, you go, okay, I'm going to look and see, is avoid avoiding. Right? I don't want to look at that. Or self-judgment, where you start to beat yourself up and you say, I'm bad and wrong, I have to change all these beliefs right away. And you try to sort of overlay the good positive belief on the negative one, because what happens is then you get into an internal war inside, and it can actually strengthen the negative ones. So what you want to do is put them in the fire of the or the cauldron. Let's mix our metaphors and let them go at each other until the new thing comes forward. And the new thing is this new action in the world from a different place. And so it really helps to be curious. Oh, I wonder what money beliefs I do have. Oh, I have $25,000 in debt and it's growing. Why is that? Right? What are the core beliefs driving that? And it's okay. And I just want to learn and grow from this, for example. Now, what's really helpful while you're doing this inner work is to really think about what are your core beliefs about what creates income. And this is where a lot of people get into trouble, is because they think things like the time I put out, like time for money, right? If you have a job, you're used to, I worked this many hours, I get this much money. So if I want more money, I have to put in more time. Now, if you run your own business, you know that you can spend a lot of time and get no money back. And you can spend a little bit of time and get a lot of money back, because it's about value, not time for money. But a lot of people think, okay, well, if I really stress myself out and work really hard and put in, 7 days a week, then I'll be worthy of money. And again, that actually isn't in the universe, in universal laws, how you create income. Other people say it's my education, if I get more education, or it's my family, right? They get supported by family. But in the end, really, I think at sort of an energetic level is what creates income is providing value to the world. Now, maybe the way you provide value doesn't immediately come back in this equal reciprocity thing. But if you're going to look at universal laws around how money works in the universe, or any form of income or resources or support, it is about me being out in the world, creating value in this generous giving place. And then it comes back. And I invite you to look back on your life and see if that's been true in some ways. I notice it's true for me that if I've got a giving attitude versus a grasping attitude, all of a sudden somebody will call out of the blue and, want to book me for something or want to hire me for something, or it's something else. Some huge opportunity comes in from a completely unexpected place. But I think it's because you got into this relationship with the world where you are giving value and the world gives value back. And it's not, and if you're looking for it has to come from the place I give it, especially if you're at home taking care of kids and you're being supported by a spouse or something like that, or you're going through a reinvention period and you're living on unemployment benefits, right? It's going to feel weird to try to, find that match there. The other belief we found that really, really helps people shift is this belief in you're 100% responsible for your results. Hey, I'm just checking for questions and insights. There's some good ones. So yeah, 100% responsible for your results is huge because it's going to force you out of the victim mentality. And even people who do tons of personal growth work, you can catch themselves getting into a victim mode, like things aren't showing up for me and feeling like a victim about it instead of kind of going, I wonder if I'm doing or usually thinking something that's causing this. That's one of the most wise questions and empowering questions you could ask yourself is, what is a different way I can think to create the results I want? What can I discover, like be curious, like a scientist, what can I learn about from this situation are hugely empowering life and have no challenges and no setbacks and no obstacles. I think, you wouldn't learn anything and you wouldn't grow and you'd probably find life kind of boring. So it was all meant to be. It's all made me who I am today. I had this client who had lost 2 businesses, gone bankrupt once, 2 divorces, and he was helping people. This is irony. He was helping people around, growing their business and helping them along with that, with their money mindset. And he said, I don't feel like I can really talk about that, even though I really want to talk about it because of my past around it. But I helped him reframe it as just like, because you went through that stuff, you're in the perfect position to help somebody. Like if somebody has bankrupted a business, for example, they would be much wiser in helping someone else prevent it than someone who never went bankrupt, right? And as soon as he saw it that way, he was like, oh yeah, completely changed his self-image. So think about that with you. If there's anything you're holding on to with yourself, just letting that stuff go and forgiving yourself, I found just changes a person's income, like almost instantly, I've found in some situations. So how do you shift so that it sticks? That's what everyone always asks, right? Like I go there for a while and then boom, snap back to the old, more limiting beliefs. Well, again, it's an alchemical process. I think, the universe or your higher self or whatever you want to call that wants to make sure you learn and that the learning sticks, right? So it's a bit of an all back and forth. sometimes. But if you go through this Avara model that's in the book, you can sort of, it helps you go on that alchemical process. That's why there's that sort of infinity symbol with the circle, and then the flower that comes out of it is the new life, the new possibility comes out of that interaction of opposites, right? And you'll see in the book is that you just put your issue, and it could be a money issue, or it could be something else, and the facts. So you might say, you know, I'm such an idiot, I have so much debt. And the facts are, you just list the amount of debt so that you make it neutral. And then you just go through your limiting story, and you'll see the instructions where you go through your acceptance, and you see that if you keep going with the limiting story, the vision, it would likely be in your future, the actions or inactions it's leading to, and how it might be reprogramming your mind in a way you don't want. And you might be focusing your attention in the wrong way. But you pull all that up to the surface, and you see it through the writing process. And the writing process is super important because it helps actually rewrite the neural pathways, because you're physically writing it, or you can type it out too. And then you go over to the empowering, and you take what you were in the limiting, and you create a new possibility, a container of the new beliefs and archetypes and stories that you want. So now you've created a bridge between the two. And then the step E is the specific next actions. So that creates the process of, that's like heating the whole thing up until it morphs into its true creative next step in life. And where, you know, you might start to create this new archetype that's not the Dr. Faustus or the orphan or the beggar, but the superhero who, you know, pays the bills and supports the family and creates like an amazing business that makes a huge difference for people, or, you know, is the best person in your company that's making the biggest difference for everybody. And then everything changes, right? The way you see the world changes, and therefore the actions you take changes, and therefore your results change because you've changed it on the inside. And it's not an intellectual exercise, right? You have to go in there kind of like a, like somebody who knows how to play around in the back end of your computer and change the core programs that are in there. So then you leave the ordinary world, and when you go through the call to adventure, and you meet the mentor, and you face your trials and enemies, you're a superhero, right? So you face that stuff, and you deal with it, and you face the darkness, but you're okay. You're willing to go through and process the fears and the obstacles and find a way around it, because you have a new archetype and a new story. And so what I'm suggesting you do is, if you are stuck at somewhere on this hero's journey, you write it up until the point you're stuck, and then you write a future story using this as your outline, and where you have it be at the end what you want, your new perspective and the elixir that you bring home, which might be, the amount of your net worth, or how big your business is, or whatever would be a marker for yourself. And that starts to write the new neural pathways. And then, because your brain likes to orchestrate itself in story form, it says, oh, okay, I've been on this limiting hero's journey, but that's kind of boring because we keep doing that and we're stuck. Oh, here's a pathway that actually keeps going, right? And the brain wants to be efficient. The mind doesn't like being stuck. So as soon as you show it a new way, it wants to jump tracks and go there. So you just have to you're setting new train tracks. And it's a bit of an effort at first. It's like you're putting down new railway tracks. It's like, it's a bit of work. But then as soon as they're down, it's just like, boom, all your life force energy jumps over and your whole life changes. That's why I call this change your story, change your life. It's very powerful. And it opens up your brain capacity, because the limiting mind story is the brain capacity dialed right down, the survival brain, and maybe a few other functions just to keep yourself going. And most of us live in this survival brain dialed down state way too much. But the more you keep doing the empowering mind stories, you open up your brain capacity, and then you help yourself evolve by doing that. So I hope that's been helpful for you guys. If you do want to get the book, it's only up until tomorrow that you can get it for, if you want to get the EPUB or the PDF for only $7, and you get 2 amazing bonuses. So you just go to mindstoryacademy.com/book. And the EPUB, of course, is what you would use if you want to be on your tablet or your phone with iBooks. And then you can read the PDF on your laptop. Now, some people I know, they like paperback or Kindle, so you can also do that. But just this digital copy is only $7. And so I'll show you how to get either the PDF or the EPUB or the paperback or the Kindle. But either way, whatever you get these 2 Neuro Blueprints, which are audio subconscious kind of self-hypnosis processes that are associated in this case with chapter 3, how to end self-sabotage, and number 10, which we covered today, which was the hero's journey, and they're valued at $94. So $7 for $94 in value. But still, if you do want to go to Amazon and get this Kindle or paperback, all you do is email us your receipt, and we'll make sure you get those 2 bonuses. And I'll just say that the Neuro Blueprints, if you don't know what they are, they deepen the learning so your results show up more quickly, because there is a repetition that's very helpful. And so this gives you a structure to just take, say, what you did in your home play in chapter 7 called The Hero's Journey, and you deepen it and you strengthen it by listening, say 7 days straight to this little 15-minute morning Neuro Blueprint. Change your story around money goes quicker, and therefore your results start to change. It's very cool. So let's see if we have any questions. Yeah, so one question is, if you've had a limiting story like all your life and you just feel like you're not anywhere ahead with money, like how do you keep going with the story? So say you've just been sort of the beggar archetype, and you've gone out into the world and quickly refused the call, and you're staying in this one place. Well, then most of the story is a made up story. But our imagination is how we create anything in our lives. So you're going to write the story, almost the whole thing is a future story. But if you are already in the belly of the whale, you've gotten to number 7 and you're stuck because you haven't forgiven yourself around past mistakes around money, then you're only writing the part after that. And again, you can do it with anything. As I say, it can be money, or it can be relationships or health, or being on purpose, right? You feel like you've gone off your purpose, and many of us do, for money, right? I'm just going to get this job. I'm not going to do what I really want to do because I need to pay the bills, because I got kids. I got to, pay for all these things. And so you might need to forgive yourself for that. Forgive yourself for either doing one or 2 things when we sell out ourselves is to learn how to enjoy what you're doing, knowing it's leading somewhere else, or leave it and go and be more on purpose and change your money beliefs so that it shows up in a different way. So any other questions? Let me just check here. Yeah, and one of the biggest ones, as somebody's saying here, is the fear of poverty really keeps a lot of people in a straitjacket, and they won't take a risk to try something new. Not that I'm suggesting you go into poverty, but if you can somehow, sometimes it's good to just do a a worst case scenario, and you just go there, like what would be the worst case scenario, and just kind of not to create it, but to just kind of burn through the fear on it. And often when you go into your worst possible fear, you go, you know what, big deal, right? Like, big deal. And certainly you may have gone through a time in your life where you hardly had any money. I know I certainly did. I was trying to live on $250 a month at one point when I was in university. And I was, like eating one meal a day and walking everywhere, and, couldn't buy any clothes. And I started losing weight, which was a good thing because I wanted to lose weight, but none of my clothes fit. I couldn't afford new clothes. But I felt so sort of proud of myself after I spent a whole year trying to live on this, in this communal home and sharing a bed with someone. And it's just like, was it that bad? No, it wasn't that bad. So play with it and see what you come up with. So I really want to thank you guys for being here or for watching the replay. And if you want to get the book, there's one more day to get the bonuses. So just go to mindstoryacademy.com/book, or you'll see the link in the description of this live stream. Okay, thanks everybody, and we'll see you next time.